any underage girls at that party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey, and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and my experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. Just last week, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi faced some intense questioning during a congressional hearing that focused a lot on the Epstein files, what has been released, what hasn't been released, and the mishandling of the entire case by the Department of Justice. It would be putting it lightly to say that things got really heated. But in the midst of her answers and non-answers, we saw some really interesting behaviors. What do her body language, facial expressions, and word choice actually reveal? And what do I think might be causing this chaotic behavior? Let's dive right in. Okay, so there was obviously a lot going on here. The hearing went on for more than 4 hours, and a lot of the questions were repetitive both in what was being asked and the way it was being answered. So I reduced it to a couple of clips that really give us the best moments to look at, and they're going to be a little longer than my usual because a lot of these questions took a long time to set up, but they're important for context. So let's dive right in, starting with one of the clips that has gone the most viral from the whole hearing.
I'm going to show you 2 photos of former Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. Under the law Congress passed, you were allowed to redact photos to protect the victims of Epstein's trafficking operation. You redacted the photos of this victim's face because you were following the congressional law. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, that we redacted the victim's
Because you were
face?
following the congressional law, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You have now established that please put the photos back up, that we are looking at a trafficking victim. That's why I find it absolutely despicable that you sought to protect Epstein's clients, like former Prince Andrew. Last July, you closed the case on Epstein's abusers. So I ask you, Attorney General Pam Bondi, why did you shut down this investigation last July, and why have you not prosecuted former Prince Andrew?
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before
I agree with you.
You twice.
I'm reclaiming my time. I agree with you. I agree with you. During the Biden administration, I called for people looking at Epstein files. Merrick Garland dropped the ball, as did Attorney General Bill Barr, as did Alex Acosta, a whole string of failures, but you are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them. So I want to move on to another man.
Can I answer
Donald
that,
Trump.
though?
I want to move on to another
Can I
question.
answer your question about protecting
You
Prince
answered the
Andrew?
question.
You're saying no. I love this.
I want to discuss another man, Donald Trump, who is all over the Epstein files. Like former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files
I'm reclaiming my time.
be released.
I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump.
Okay, so that's a really good example of how a lot of this hearing went and the way she answered a lot of the questions. And I want to start with that second answer that she gave about Donald Trump. So she's doing something here that she does a lot. And it's, instead of answering the question, she answers where she thinks the question is going. So in this case, he asked, were there underage girls at any of these parties? And instead of giving a yes or no or I don't know, she tries to get ahead of that and answer the question that's coming up after that, which would be, did Donald Trump participate in any illegal activities, to your knowledge? But in so doing, she tips her hand and reveals the topics that actually stress her out. Because she starts by mocking the line of questioning, which is something we very often do when we're stressed out by a topic. Maybe if I mock it enough, we'll move on to a different thing. So she does that, but behaviorally, we see such an incredible shift in confidence. If you'll notice right in the beginning, there's a hesitation. Usually when she's ready to jump in on something, we see her almost cut the person off with a lot of feistiness and turn her mic on and just jump in there. Here, she actually pauses. We see two separate eye blocks right in the beginning. This is whenever we blink for a little bit longer than a normal blink would be. And the research on eye blocking or slow blinking shows us that even children who are born blind do this. So it's a human reflex. It's not a learned behavior. And we do this when we're trying to focus on something or away from something. So think of the eyes like the garage door to your thoughts. So sometimes you'll notice something great happens and we close our eyes as we celebrate because we want to hold on to this moment. Or sometimes you get negative news and you block your eyes like this as you go, oh my God, I can't believe it, because you don't want to fake signal that she doesn't want to deal with this negativity. In this moment, it could be either one of those two things. She could be closing her eyes to focus and try to figure out how she's going to tackle this uncomfortable question, or she could be blocking the eyes like this to signal that she doesn't want to deal with this. This is very well supported with this stop gesture that we see in her right hand. Now, palm orientation is not universal across cultures. In other words, different cultures use different palm orientations as they communicate. But the palm outwards like this with the fingers out is universal, and no matter where you're tuning in from, you will recognize this gesture as us trying to stop something, often combined with an oscillating gesture like this, but just the palm out is stop. Sometimes it even happens as a reflex. As we're startled, the hand comes out like this, or if we're trying to stop someone to get their attention. Now, we do need to consider Pam Bondi's baseline as well, which is really, really interesting. Baseline means the way we behave when we're not stressed within a specific conversation. That's very important. So during this hearing, when she's not stressed, how does she behave? So I watched this whole thing. And I watched her behaviors when she was answering questions that she's more comfortable with, coming from politicians that she's more comfortable with. And it's very much part of her baseline to talk with the fingers outwards like this, to the point where it actually really stands out to me. Because very often, most people, as they gesture, the fingers come in, the fingers come out like this. With her, she does a lot of this. The orientation changes, but the fingers stay pretty out like this. But we don't often see the stop gesture up here. We see her hands on her desk, we see her gesturing like this, we see some of this, fingers out, very common, but this, not so common. This is even further backed up by the fact that she does something called batoning. So we see the one finger come out like this as she briskly gestures like this, which she pretty much never does when she's relaxed or talking about a topic that she's comfortable with. This only happens when she's being very strict and putting down the law or confronting something head on. And this is backed up by research as well. Alan and Barbara Pease are two of the biggest researchers and authors on the subject of body language, and they did research on different hand positions when someone's speaking. And they found that this hand gesture, like this with one finger outwards, is the one that makes an audience feel the most disconnected and makes the speaker seem the most negative. And that makes sense, because if you think about historically what this resembles, it looks like a weapon, like a sword or a stick. And this is why we often see this when someone's angry or someone's disciplining, and it creates a big disconnect. But although all these gestures are important, what's really important here is the shift. So in the beginning, we're seeing these eye blocks, we're seeing this hesitation before she starts to answer, we're seeing this slower speech. But the moment she realizes how she's going to tackle this, she becomes a lot more feisty, her tone goes up, she starts speaking faster, and this is where we start seeing this batoning disciplinary gesture. There's also something verbally here that stands out, and it's the way that she's answering this question. There's a direct question being asked. Was Donald Trump at events where there were some underage girls? And she immediately shuts down the question, calls it ridiculous, and then says that they're just trying to deflect from all the amazing things that Trump has done. And here's the thing, she's a lawyer. She understands relevance, and that answer is not relevant to the question that was asked. Look, if during a completely different event or press conference, she wants to talk about all the good that she believes this administration is doing, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with listing those things. But here, in this hearing, that's not what she's there for. She's there to answer the questions that they have. And right now, they're talking about this. So by her saying they're just trying to deflect away from all the good things that he's done, they're not here to talk about the good things. They're here to get to the bottom of the Epstein files. And again, as a lawyer, she knows exactly what she's doing. And it's ironic that she's saying that they're the ones deflecting when this entire response is a deflection. Speaking of deflecting, let's dial it back to the first question about former Prince Andrew, which the congressman sets up in a very interesting way. So he shows two very compromising photos involving a underage girl, and her face has been censored. And he asks Pam Bondi, the reason this is censored, the reason we can't see her, is because by law, you have censored pictures of victims to protect them. Is that correct? And Pam Bondi says yes, which really sets up a very interesting situation that we're going to see later on how that develops. And so the congressman asks, then why haven't you prosecuted former Prince Andrew? And that's a good question, because based on what she just said, they censored the face of the young woman in this picture because in this picture, she's a victim. And therefore, he's potentially committing a crime in this picture. That's what victim means. So instead of answering the question as to why they haven't gone after him, she does something else that she's going to do constantly throughout this hearing. And she says, I don't remember you asking Merrick Garland that question. And Merrick Garland was Joe Biden's Attorney General during Joe Biden's presidency. And she often says, well, why didn't you ask him that? And in so doing, I get that it's a deflection. I get that it gets her off this topic, but it also kind of highlights the fact that these questions are worth asking. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because if she thought it was a stupid question, she would go, that's a stupid question, or she would just answer it, because what does it matter? But by turning it around and saying, well, you should have asked the guy before me, she's kind of admitting that this is an important question, even if she's refusing to answer it. But the congressman here does something quite clever, which a lot of the other ones didn't do because they let this distraction kind of derail the conversation. He says, I agree with you. Merrick Garland did mess this up, as did the one before him and the one before him. This has been messed up for decades, but you're in a position now where you can actually make a difference. So this kind of counters her saying, well, why didn't you ask the guy before me? He's going, no, we should have asked all of them, but now you're here, so we're asking you. And it's interesting because it seemed like she was going to answer, but he took his time back to move on to the next topic. And I would have really liked to see what she was going to say there, because by countering that, he actually